Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, everybody. My name is Kyle King. I'm the Managing Director of Capacity Building National. Welcome to another webinar in our series that we do in conjunction with the International Emergency Management Society. We have a really interesting topic today about lessons from Turkey and the response recovery after the earthquake and rebuilding, of course. Before we get started, just a few administrative remarks, and then we will jump right in. First of all, of course, my name is Kyle King, and Harold Drager is here with us today. And Harold, I think I'll just turn over to you for a quick announcement.
Yeah, I like to tell that we are doing well with preparation of the annual conference this year, which also will be in hybrid mode. And so far, we have a deadline on Monday. So those who haven't submitted, please do during the weekend. We have just now 46 submissions, out of them 4 panels, so there will be more presentations, and already from 25 countries. Go to the website, you find an overview, and you also there find the link to EasyChair and can submit your paper. And you can join virtually, or you are welcome in South Africa for the conference. That's what I say today. And I look forward for Kit, of course. We are longtime friends, and Kit was also our keynote speaker in Romania in 2011 or 12, Kit, something?
Yeah, maybe 2011. Yeah.
Yeah, that's good. I look forward to listen to you today.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, thanks. And so just a couple of other quick announcements. So just a quick recap, they're in our third year. In our third year of collaboration between Teams and CBI in terms of webinar series and trying to enhance the international conversation around emergency and crisis management. And we started in 2021 and 2022 with our international models and emergency management program. And we went through, I think it was about 32 countries. Harold, correct me if I'm wrong, but with about over 1,000 participants in the program. 2023, we're more thematic focused. And so we have previously done a smart cities webinar with the Impetus project, which is an EU-based project on smart cities and technology. And for what to expect for the rest of 2023, we are going to have more webinars, again, which is more of a thematic focus. And we're looking at partners, projects, and other programs to be able to bring to the wider audience so people can learn about what's going on in the international space, especially in terms of the various work being done. So that could be EU projects. There's things such as Impetus, the previous project that I had mentioned, FireRes, FireLog, which is extreme wildfire management, and other programs out there as well. And of course, as always, we are open to recommendations. If there's something you would like to hear about, certainly please do let us know, and we will certainly try and find the speakers to do that. If you're on a project, of course, and you're working on something and you want to present, certainly reach out to Harold or myself. I'll provide the email addresses here inside the chat right after we get started, and you can just let us know. We'd be happy to have you on as a guest as well. So we've got quite a few people registered for the webinar today. I think we exceeded about over 100, I believe. But just a couple of quick points. The webinar will be recorded, so if you do miss it or you have to leave early, we will be providing a link for the webinar itself. It'll be posted to the YouTube channel, also the Teams website, sort of about a week after the event itself, so sometimes next week. If you do have questions, which I'm sure a lot of you will do, for Kit and his presentation, please use the Q&A function. That way we're able to see the questions and distinguish them from the chat. If there's anything, or if you have any technical issues or anything else like that, you can try and use the chat, and I'll be monitoring that as well. But please use the Q&A because we can actually capture those after the webinar as well. And so with that in mind, I'm going to turn it over to you, Dr. Kit Miyamoto, and thanks for joining us today. Over to you.
Thanks so much. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Okay, so let me share my screen. Okay, so next about 30 minutes or so, I like to present about the Turkey earthquake, and we've been there since day 2, and we have operations there, local operation currently. So that's our discussion today. Let's see here. Just a little bit about company Miyamoto International. We're a global engine company with a humanitarian focus, and we have about 30 different locations globally. And as you can see, we're located in a so-called prone to disasters, no conflict. And right now, currently, I spend my half of the time in Turkey and also Ukraine. And that's where the tragic disasters ongoing. So that's what we are focused on right now. But we have solid operations in the United States, as you can see in California and Nevada, pretty much every major cities, and we do actually no more engineerings, there. So that's kind of company we are. Last 40, 50 years we've been around. We not only visited the earthquakes, but also the been a part of a recovery process for about last 15 years now. So that's that type of experience we kind of bring in. Now, so here it's the location of the epicenter area of Turkey. That's where the you can see that Mediterranean Sea and the southern border right next to Syria. That's where the epicenter is. First one's happening magnitude 7.8, which is a big one. It's about 4 a.m. in the morning, and a few hours after 7.5, back to back. So it's affected a large area. You're talking about the distance of probably about 400, 500 kilometers long and 100 to 200 kilometers wide, and a very mountainous area. So this is in any means, this is a huge disaster. I mean, affecting the almost 20% of a country. There is beautiful, any other earthquake places we visit, it's just the huge mountains and snowy countries up in the high area. It's just unbelievable places. But it's also same time very difficult to get to certain areas, you can see, and it's widely spread the whole area. And this is truly one of the worst disasters I haven't seen probably since 2008 Sichuan earthquake. Just some parts of a country or affected area is just distracted, just beyond imagination, actually. So what happened here? It's affected almost 40 million people in the area, affected 1.7 million building structures. They're, most of the case, 95% of the time, they're mid-rise apartment buildings, reinforced concrete. They usually you see from a 3-story to 10, 12-story, and even small villages. It's high density like that. So it's a larger construction. That's what you see out there. And many newer stocks too. It seems it's happened a lot of growth happening last about 10 years or so, 20 years. So there's a lot of new construction, but also we saw a lot of older construction too. Initially it collapsed 35,000 buildings like this, about 2% of it. And about 200,000 buildings are heavily damaged or about collapsing. And about 500,000 more is a light and moderate damage. So if you see the total context of this whole affected area, this is something we see quite often, 1 to 2% collapse ratio, and about 10 to 20% of what we call red tag is badly damaged, pretty dangerous to enter. And about 20 to usually 40% range is a kind of yellow tag you see out here, and about 50% to 60% is what we call green tag, which means that there's nothing happened. So it's huge disaster affecting a big area. That's why the collapse ratio, so for collapse quantity is high, 35,000 collapse, but 2% or 1% is something you will experience in different places. Even a place like I said, California, we do have a lot of older building stocks, and which does affect, we have a similar type of issues out there. Killed almost 51,000 people and injured 100,000 people more. And this biggest part of it here is 4.1 million people are displaced. So you're talking about 30% of the affected area, people displaced. And this is close to the Syrian border. So as you can imagine, there's a refugees. Yes, true. It's about 10 to 20% of the population in this area, depends on cities, but there are recent refugees from Syria, actually. and estimated about $100 billion of direct damage. So on top of that, obviously job loss and many business losses, all that on top of the so-called indirect loss on top of it, which usually at 3 to 4 times more than the actual direct loss. So you're talking about just huge impact to this country. It's almost affecting 10% of a GDP. It's a big deal. It's magnitude 7.8, 7.5 back to back. Just think this is 7.8. Remember that California and we had magnitude 6.9, 6.8 earthquake in Northridge, LA. It's 1994. 7.8 is magnitude 1 difference, right? Which means actually, believe it or not, 1,000 times more energy input here. So if magnitude 7.8, 7.5 happens, it's very few countries can withstand that. And but why this happened? And I talked about big earthquakes, big impact, that's true. But also the building code. Turkish building code changed in 1998 to address the seismic issue. So which means anything built prior to that, around 2000 or so, has no seismic consideration at all. It changed after that. So it's it's good, but not before. Same thing applied to the many different countries. Most of the countries, this change happened in mid-1980s, like Japan's in a case like that. In the United States, it's by 1973. So in the US, we have a bad building stocks, really dangerous one, prior to the built in mid-1970s, actually. A peculiar thing here is and also we see this quite a bit in many different countries too. There's no license requirements for the contractors. So like, let's say if I decide to be a Turkish contractor, I can be one, so that's definitely the issue does exist. But probably more importantly, there is no inspection requirement for privately owned buildings by the engineers. Sometimes contractors do hire the engineers to look at things, but that's, it's not quite work. There's no independentness about that, independent engineers to review and overseas. That's actually very, very critical part of it. And I see this many, many different countries. And this is something that it's made a huge deal out of it. Now, this is one of the pictures I took, and believe it or not, this actually met intent of a building code. It didn't collapse. This is a typical concrete, we call columns, like a pillar supporting the floors, right? And so those columns are very important. If those pillars buckle or fails, everything comes down. So how critical this is. And you can see that the little hoops around it, that's what we call tie. And that's actually keep everything together. If it's pops, everything goes. It's kind of equivalent to the wine barrel. Wine barrel, if you see it, there's a steel straps, essentially do the exact same thing. Just think about it without straps. What's going to happen? Whole barrel will explode, right? That's exactly the same thing it's going on in a seismic condition for the columns like that. So, but when we engineer the buildings, doesn't matter use the Turkish building code or Japanese building code, or American building code, it should look like this. Big earthquake like a 7.8, 7.0 happens. It's a structural damage like this one here causes the absorbing seismic energy and have been not collapsing yet. So it's scary looks, but it's met the internal code. Is this repairable? It will be very difficult. If the buildings are tilted quite a bit, it can be. But this case is maybe. In this case, like you may be able to reinforce some more columns here. But in many cases, it's not like that. You're gonna see it was a lot of collapse like that. What happened here? Well, some cases I saw a lot of cases actually smooth aggregate. See the concrete's made of the cement, the powder cell and sand, and also the aggregate and the water. And the aggregate is essentially rocks. That's actually bind together. That's such an important component of it. So that's why the aggregate usually ragged little piece of rocks, like this. But I see it, this is a river rocks like that. And also rebar is this case smooth, should it be deformed, and also how tied in, that kind of thing is very important. For example, this hoops I was talking about, isolate was 90-degree hook. It's a depth, by the way, 130-degree hook. It's little things like this, embedding into concrete and keeping together, that makes a huge difference. See, media talked about the corruptions and fraud kill those buildings. I just don't see it. It's because of the amount of concrete, amount of rebar. Each buildings I saw, both old and new, it's just a lot in there, a lot of rebar and a lot of concrete. But I see the little detailing missing it, such as little hook, such as using river rock versus the aggregate. Those are little things. Doesn't save it much money at all whatsoever. It's just I think what happened here is a lack of knowledge of the laborers and the contractors. That's actually causing it. That's why the inspection process is very important. Inspection doesn't mean just the inspect, say okay or not okay. It's actually a discussion with contractors and laborers to them to really understand what is the importance of these things. Because most of our contractors and masons, if they understand that some of a practice like this kill people, they wouldn't do that, you know. And because they're locals, right? And they don't want to harm the neighbors and friends and the family, you know, just doing their practices. So capacity building is a very important part of it through the inspections and so on. There's something that we see results of everywhere, even a poor country like Haiti. We've been working there since 2010 after the earthquake killed 315,000 people. And obviously contractor were masons at that time. There was no capacity about how to build things like this. But today, 2021, they had an earthquake, and we visit into the very depth of a jungle for the assessments and so on. We noticed a lot of good practice, like 135-degree hooks seen here. We saw a lot of like that. So it's definitely the capacity building works, and that's the inspections are such a critical component of it. Let me show you the one video here.
You see that? You see little rebar stick into like that, tiny bit. You see the connection of it, just little sticking out. And that basically, you know, earthquake code is supposed to be hooked into like that, so it doesn't just dislodge too easily. But like that, you can just dislodge. That's exactly what happened there. So this building had no chance at all. Look at how heavy this building is. Concrete structure, really heavy. This is this may be after 2000 though. The reason is I know this is because of the rebar is a deformed bar, which means not smooth, like a lot of rips in it. That started happening after 2000, so this is actually supposed to be perfect for the building. But obviously, some minor details didn't fly. You see, just such a little things, you know. Little thing is like you straight in or hooked in, you know. That's it. That's the only difference. Life or death. This makes a huge difference. It doesn't cost anything really if you think about it, you know.
But why did it take humanity so long to figure this out?
I think because of the knowledge. Because I think a contractor working here probably didn't have, well, I know it's not probably, I know the fact they didn't get no inspection by the structural engineers. Structural engineer did not ask to be here, and they're not required to be here, so they don't be here. So therefore that they do things like this. If the structural engineer, he would say, hey, wait a minute, bend the bar a little bit, you know? And they would, because it doesn't cost anything for them, you know?
And then this building might have survived the earthquake.
Well, yeah, for sure. I mean, you can see evidence of it, you know? If the people, that's why this place is very interesting. Either no damage at all or complete collapse. You don't see somewhat between there. Because usually a case like this, you see the somewhat between. You see the good building, cracked building, a lot of cracked building, collapse. But this case is a good, no damage, or complete collapse. So when the complete collapse, just it's obviously just shows that nothing was right.
So the X?
X usually indicates they discovered the body or people buried, and usually that's the mark for the upper system rescue. They usually mark something like that, or sometimes you discover dead person, and you sometimes mark like that. I don't know what this means actually, but that's something about related to the person. You know, that's sad, isn't it? I mean, saddest part is really that this can be completely changed. Oh, I don't smoke.
Teşekkürler.
Teşekkürler. Çok iyi.
Özbek. Where are you from?
Are you from Uzbekistan?
Japan. Yes. Brother.
Oh, thank you.
Ye. Al çok al çok. İst tarhana.
Is that Hana?
Tarhana.
Tahana.
Tarhana.
What is it?
Dişlerine dikkat et, kırmasın.
Good, good.
Güzel.
Nice. What is it?
Cebine koy, cebine.
Cebe. Poşetle getirsin.
Allah.
Look.
Put it in your pocket.
Look. Çok teşekkürler.
It's pretty amazing, you know. I mean, when we're walking through the towns like that, people coming through all the time, and you know, things like that happens. It's just pretty amazing, actually. But here's the you know, typical things, what we call soft story. This kind of thing doesn't quite work. Become like this. You know, we see a lot of it. Pancake. This used to be at the 3-story building, become 2 because of the downstairs has the brittle concrete structure and car parks or commercial. So that's why it collapsed just like this. Soft story, or the concrete structure, or not meeting the little hooks, so on, death. But doesn't mean that all the buildings went bad. Remember, the 50 to 60% of building stocks, or 60% of building stocks are completely undamaged, you know. And this is a great examples of it. Hospital. Now, there's about a dozen hospitals in this area, and it has what we call base isolation. What the base isolation is, essentially the building sits on a ground, right? And ground shakes, building shakes with it. But base isolation is isolate the building itself by the roller. So when the ground shakes, building base gets stable. That's a system look like that. This one of video is taken. So that's a base of a structure. You can see that the roller is activated. So its ground is moving right away, but the building is staying the same speed. Essentially, that's what's going on here. So there are hospitals, dozens of this area. They're not only did they get damaged, but also they're functional after the earthquake. Think about it, functional after the earthquake. That's a pretty amazing thing. And this a new hospital, appears to be there's no structural damage at all, looks pretty good. But however, there's a lot of non-structural damage, like here outside, a certain settlement happens, so it's not very stable outside, and also the inside a lot of cracks and stuff like that. So this hospital is pretty much evacuated. So even didn't kill anyone, but it wasn't a functional. It's a fixed-based construction, not like isolation. So technology works, and Turkey does have the probably one of the best building codes, by the way, and engineers, education system, everything there. It just, that's why you see the evidence of it. And however, once come to the private buildings like that, it doesn't quite work. And also we saw a lot of public infrastructure, which performs so much better. You just saw the evidence of the hospital, but also the like roads, bridges, education facilities, they perform much better. Why is that? Because they're inspected. That's simple, you know, actually doesn't take that much. So system damage. So initially we are invited by the government and also the United Nations agencies to kind of see assess the situations there. And we use the NASA JPL image data, and we essentially what NASA does is that they fly over globally every like 9 hours or so. So you essentially take the picture before, which taken all the time, and take a picture after the fact, overlay each other. So you can see differences of the movement. So this is something that we've been working with them for a little while, and to see that how good those things are. For example, this particular case in Haiti, 2021, we're looking at on the ground, we assessed that 2,400 buildings are damaged, but it actually did the forecast by 2,000 by the JPL, NASA, and so on. So it's actually it's not 100% accurate, but it's good enough to really show exactly the locations of damage concentration is, and we can actually direct our effort to the particular area. So this is actually very, very important one. So this is something that we As we go through in the first week, we publish it, we put in the public domain and send to governments and send to UN agencies and embassies and so on to assist that. So just going through a couple of cities and what we saw up there, Iskendrum. Iskendrum is almost closer to the Cyprus, closer to the Mediterranean Sea down there on the south. That's a destruction is pretty heavy because it's along by the ocean, very soft soil, and a big river coming through. Almost a 40% of the buildings are damaged, heavily damaged actually. So that's what's going on. So you can see the red components that's closer to the bay because that's that reclaimed area, and also the close to the ocean, right? So soft soil. That's why you see concentration of damage like that. And if you come to mountainside, you can see much less damage. There's something we see this over and over again. If the building sits on the hard soil, even a bad buildings, older buildings actually perform very well. But if it sits on the soft soil, not so. Hatay is an ancient town of Antioch. Maybe some of you guys know, read history books. But it was beautiful ancient towns. But it's fairly far from a so-called epicenter, but destruction was tremendous. It's almost 40% concentrated in very small historical area by the river again. So you can see the very soft soil. And you're going to see things like this. You're talking about you can drive through from edge to edge, probably 30 minutes. You're going to see this essentially destruction throughout that landscape. I have never seen like that for quite a long time. This almost equivalent to like some sort of a bomb blast in a big scale going on. Just there's no chance here. But again, even in the middle of destruction, you see a new construction like this standing tall without no damage apparent at all whatsoever. And this in Hatay, right middle of it. It's new construction. So if it's done right, it's not a problem. Turkish building code is good. Smaller constructions are fine also. Gaziantep that's where our office is located currently. And Gaziantep is an ancient town. It's right at the epicenter, by the way, but damage is very limited. It's 2 to 3%. You can see the kind of northern part of it, or east part of it a little bit. You can see that some red and yellow. That's what damage is, and a lot to do with the soil characteristics here. This is a nearby just road. You can see that the rock exposed. There's a lot of hard rock things going on. So if the city sits on this rock, sites like this, it's completely different. See, over the years, going through the earthquakes, obviously having a good buildings is very important because good buildings can withstand either hard or soft soil. There's not a problem at all whatsoever. Usually evidence of an time, right? But if you live in bad buildings, you definitely want to be in a hard rock site. Give me one example. 2015 Nepal earthquake, Kathmandu. The epicenter was several hundred kilometers away. It's long away, but Kathmandu got affected quite a bit because that city sit on about 400 meters to 500 meters over this very deep, super soft clay soil, really soft, almost like a jello sometimes. So that's a building sits on, or the structures or city per se. So it vibrates in a long distance earthquake. So when it vibrates a long distance earthquake, you know what damages? Tall, high-rise buildings. So smaller construction made of brick has no damage at all. But once it comes to taller buildings, it's way a lot. So it damaged tremendously. So it's a lot to do with what type of the frequency coming through, what kind of soil you are, what type of building you are in. That makes a big difference, the survival mode. But if you got the good building technology, good structure system, good inspection, it can take all. So the Gaziantep a lot of older buildings, but damage limited like this. So response and recovery components of it. So again, I saw a lot of media criticizing the Turkish government about slow response, or they don't know what's going on, or disorganized. I 100% completely disagree on that one. Actually, as a first, I can see this one of the very best responses I've seen in quite a long time. You're talking about the magnitude 7.8 happened in early morning in middle of a really remote area, a mountainous area, right? They did a great job. For example, almost the 10,000 members from over 100 countries, their urban search and rescue team coming through. They straight those teams in all the villages. You see at all the small towns everywhere, there's just teams exist. That's a huge logistic challenges. And also same time they deployed that heavy equipment. And when I was there in day 2, those bulldozers just everywhere. And so they essentially what they did is they asked the private sector locally to be in a part of it, to mobilize them. That's actually a really critical part of it. So all the private companies, they just got on to the work in day 1. That's the huge thing. So, it's a tragedy we lost over 50,000 people. But I do know because this efficiency of a logistics that government provided, I know the urban search and rescue teams, they saved hundreds, if it's not thousands of people out there. Pretty incredible. I met one of those, this from my India team. They actually rescued 3 people from this one city they're working on. I see that people like that everywhere. I mean, they just do incredible job out there, by the way. And also this is day 2 picture I took. They deployed 150,000 tents in essentially first 48 hours, warm tents. It's pretty sizable, family can stay. And you see the so-called organized tent cities like this, pretty much every cities out there. And they also deployed somewhere between 100,000 to 200,000 emergency personnel from the government in the first 24 hours. Who can do that? Hatay Airport. Hatay, I used the picture, 40% building damage. And this airport was no exception. It's still on the soft soil that had damage. But 4th day, they fixed, opened. It's completely open there. It's pretty amazing, actually. 4th day, in the middle of this disaster, airport was operational. Highway freeway system, within the 48 hours, it's pretty much available everywhere. And freeway, you can drive in 110 kilometers per hour anywhere. It's just damage is limited, but there's some certain little things happen, fixed really quickly, was able to open up. Demolition. This is day 3. You see the contractors working through to taking down the dangerous buildings. This is something pretty incredible. You don't usually see that. So they're just taking down really quickly to remove this risk from the community. So be able to get back to their normal life as soon as possible. So they're actually doing that. Yeah, today it's a huge effort. Much of so-called half-collapsing buildings did come down already, and they're actually reconstructing some of the apartment buildings already. So things like that everywhere. So emergency response components is definitely something they done right. I have no question, and I don't know exactly how they can improve what they did, But one thing I do notice that you don't see that many international UN or agencies and stuff like that, because I think that the Turkish government decided they can handle it, and it's probably true. I mean, they were preparing for Istanbul earthquake, after all, which is a town of 20 million people more. That's why they have a supply of tents and all the things set up for the Istanbul earthquake, so they deploy quickly to that southern border. That's something it's pretty amazing. But there's some internationals I saw that work Central Kitchen. We collaborated with them quite a bit. The chef Jose is in charge. It's almost something like a $500 million operation there. He was cooking on day 1 something like 20 to 40,000 meals per day in the affected area. It's a very important part of it, And obviously, government was also doing too. So he's like supplying the food to the government, tents and cities and stuff like that. Damage assessment. They assessed something like 300,000 buildings in the first 2 to 3 weeks, and that's about fastest assessment things I've seen. Also, it's very organized. Each assessed building has a QR code, as you can see, so residents can download it and categorize in 5 categories: collapse to no damage throughout, essentially. So that's a system like that. But most of all, how people reacted to it. And this is the hatai, and there's a soup kitchen made up by these folks, and they actually lost homes too. But they're making this soup, and whoever coming by, they actually give it. You know, they lost everything, but they still want to help. They still provided things. It's just what people makes a difference, and this is definitely a case too. So basically, what we are looking right now is a town of Osmaniye and how we can actually get into the repair components of the Gaziantep. So let's take a look. So we talked about the heavily damaged, which I showed a lot of picture of it, right? 35,000 or 100,000, stuff like that. But again, there is about 500,000 more buildings which been damaged, but they're lightly damaged. So this one here is I call lightly damaged. It doesn't look so good, but it's actually so bad, because what it is that the structural elements, remember, columns or pillars, they're actually intact. And what's cracking here is an infill walls, we call. It's made of a block of brick and a plastic crack in it. So once you replace those things or repair those things back to the original state, actually. So that's actually the very important things, you know, because remember, 4.1 million people lost homes. They're living in a tent. They need to come back. They had to bring back the normal life as soon as possible. So addressing this lightly or moderate damaged structures is very critical components of that. Again, this we classify it to be lightly damaged because there's no structural damage at all. You see a little pounding like this. This actually the stable mechanism, because the floor-to-floor matches actually absorb a lot of energy by doing that. So currently funded by working with the USA, the CRS, to address this 470,000 building stocks, repairable houses. We're also making an assessment of each of this and communicated with the communities and the governments. So we are first working with the Gaziantep, the city of Gaziantep, to start to assist them to look in those lightly damaged constructions. So actually, assessment is a pretty innovative. We use the ArcGIS Survey 123 app to we made up this so-called app system, which that one can assess. We're just measuring the repair. I mean, measuring the cracks, automatically figured out what repair methods has to be done, what type of material need to be done. So give you bill of a quantity, essentially the estimation by end of the survey, which usually takes about 2 hours per building. And university and the government already have this rapid structural vulnerability assessment tool to basically see that, okay, sure, it did survive an earthquake, but what this means, what would the potential vulnerabilities to exist? So that particular assessment is part of this Survey 123 app system. And thirdly, we looked at green tag of undamaged buildings, because QR code is great, but sometimes hard to see if that thing what's going on. So having a more visual communication tool, some stickers with green tag, so people can understand it's undamaged. So this is the first program affected 165,000 people. So this is a Turkish person I met on the field, and he was in the video, right? It's something else, you know. He was so he right after the video we took, and he asked me to go up to his apartment. He's living the 4th level of this 5-story building, and he wanted to know what we think about these things. And I saw a lot of cracks there, but their cracks is a non-structural damage. So we talked about how can be repaired and how fast can be done. And he was very happy, obviously, because he understands lightly damaged buildings. So what he did, he gave me his childhood scarf. He said he owned since 6 years old. I said, "Oh, thank you, but no, can't take this." But on top of it, he said he gave me this medal. He was a Turkish special force, and he had this gold medal, and he insisted to give it to me. And I said, there's no way I can take the medal from you. That's like a really important, I just looked at cracks. But he insisted, and my Turkish partner basically said, you better take it, otherwise, he's not going to leave you. So I took that. It's just pretty amazing, just incredible. And he just have this Ukrainian flag in a flying hat. It's just amazing people, This is such a huge destruction happened to this country, and it's incredible challenging ahead, no question. But I do believe that if any country, any people can come back strong, faster, and actually stronger and safer, this will be Turkish people. I have no question in my mind. That's about it. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you. It's very interesting. So just one question I would have is, when you talked a lot about obviously the aspects of sort of the regulatory functions, right? And so in a conference I was recently in, we talked about sort of how to create systemic change through a nation, and you have to have some factors, in my opinion, that will contribute to that type of change. That has to be, I think, political ownership. You have to have a legal sort of responsibility, so legislation in place. You have to have a regulatory authority, which is sort of what you're talking about. But then you also have to have, of course, resources allocated and human capital development to be able to really execute something that's sort of like a national strategy down to say a community level. And so I'm very curious to hear your thoughts about how Turkey is, or if I'm sure these discussions are happening, but how have you heard about their approach post-earthquake? How are they going to implement these changes? And so is there an opportunity to move society forward, I guess?
Oh, yeah, most definitely, Kyle. I mean, so-called policy changes or regulation changes. Government can only changes if there's public support. It doesn't matter which government you're in. If the broader public support, stuff happens, just no question, And for example, let's say Turkey too, that 1999 earthquake happened. There's a broader public support of we do something about the risk in Istanbul, right? That caused this robust response structure they built up. That caused the addressing the public infrastructure. I was a part of the ISMET program, which is addressing about $2 billion projects to address 2,000 schools and hospitals and public infrastructure in Istanbul. I mean, they was serious. They want to get things done fast as possible because they're so worried. Public is worried about what could happen to their kids, right? So below the public support. So that pushed the government to obviously borrow the money to do this kind of work. So yes, definitely the huge public support now. So usually in a case like this, doesn't matter Japan or Turkey or Romania or other country would it be? Usually the changes happens after a major earthquake like this, major disaster like this. It's extremely unfortunate because we lost 50,000 people, right? But also this is a fortunate event to make really changes in the future, and which will be, I have no question about it in my mind. And as I said, Turkish don't have to change the building code. It's everything there. Education system probably best in the world. Got great engineers, resources there, and Turkish contractors are robust. I mean, those are people who build a world, by the way. They're the people who actually built the $8 billion international airport in like 3 years without no tax money. You're talking about this kind of nation here, okay? That's why I'm very hopeful and be optimistic about this situation. But it's gonna be a hard work ahead, though. Just no question about it.
Yeah, definitely. And that's also, it's quite interesting when it crosses from, sort of the state to the private sector, the involvement in the private sector and things like that. But in terms of, so one of the questions we have is that, and you've already mentioned it, like there in the reports in the media in the aftermath of the earthquake, there was a lot of blaming and accusations that were going around, especially with the government response. So it's a long question. I'll just paraphrase Arif, if you don't mind. But so in the example of the Turkish army, the reports of them not being mobilized, and they have a response capability. Have you had any observations regarding things that could have been done better by the government at all?
No. I mean, it's not like I get paid by the Turkish government here, by the way. But no, I mean, seriously. I mean, no. I mean, I don't think America, if the same thing happened in California, I don't think we can do what they did, quite frankly. And basically, president made a decree on the first day, say, okay, contractors, private sector, this is your time to pay back, step up, put your mobilize the equipment. That's his decree, and ask. And people reacted to that. It doesn't happen in the US, I don't know. And so can they make it better? Of course, anything can be better, right? I mean, in the first 2 weeks, I don't know if they can do any better, quite frankly. I think maybe at communication aspect of it. I don't know why the media pick them too so harshly. I have no idea what motivation is coming from. But because it's a tragic event, it's always like to poke the governments. Doesn't matter which government you're in. That's that's my observation. Put this way, that's what I say.
Yeah. Thanks for that. And so with 1.7 million, we'll move on to the next question. So with 1.7 million structures affected in the 2 earthquakes and about $104 billion estimated damage, how long do you think it will take Turkey to recover?
5 years.
5 years?
Yeah.
Okay, that's pretty precise.
Yeah, it will be. I mean, government won't do it faster, and they don't have $100 billion. That's one thing I know. But the private sector is very robust there. Those are freeway system, which did not damage at all, by the way. You got the huge bridges and all kind of things going on, right? And that's done by PPP, the public-private sector partnership. Essentially, government provides the land, and private sector just invest, and they pay the government fee each year, and that becomes government property after a few years, after, I don't know, 10, 20 years, whatever. That's they do best on there. That's how they built the international airport like that. I don't know any other countries do like that, by the way. And so it's because of that kind of approach they have, because of the private sector is so robust. Because of that, I think there'll be a lot of things like that will be happening in the area there. But my concern is the recovery phase. Because it's not possible. No government cannot take down the 100,000 buildings and just reconstruct 100,000 buildings. It's not possible. It's just not. I think it's very important to look at what's repairable to repair it. Because once take the building down, it's very difficult to build back. It takes longer. And usually even a red tag, heavily damaged one, or severely damaged vehicle, or structural damage going on, it takes usually about 10% about replacement cost. You can repair, also strengthening at the same time. Average between 5 to 15%, by the way. So it's actually very cost effective and fast. And you can do that probably in less than 6 months or so, maybe less than that, to do things like that, right? So I think at the repair of this uncollapsed building cycle, I think that's a very important repair and strengthening. I think that's something considered to be best practice. There's something that we do in many different places.
And in terms of this rapid visual screening or the damage assessment that you've done with the buildings when you were there, was there anything else to that? I mean, was there more to that in terms of the initial screening that you did? Was it was that sort of endorsed, if I understand this question, endorsed by FEMA? Or also it was included non-destructive testing? Did you go beyond just the rapid assessment for damage in the buildings?
Well, we didn't do that rapid assessment. Rapid assessment done by government, AFAD.
Okay.
Organized that. So it's a government organizational thing. They're the one who did it. Only thing we're actually doing is to understand what does the response structure look like, any kind of gaps exist, not which we didn't find much, and also the how we can actually deal with the recovery components, more focused on that part of it, because that's what usually UN agencies or government when they want to assist beyond this emergency phase. That's when they're looking to that. So that's our focus on the recovery components there. You know what I mean? So assessment is more like geared toward that. Is it repairable or not repairable? What's the cost of a repair? That type of things, essentially.
Mhm. Okay, interesting. And so another question here, which we didn't really touch upon, but I'd like to hear your thoughts as well, which is hazardous materials and chemical release during the earthquake.
Yeah.
This was a remote area, but of course there are petrol stations and everything else. So how was that handled?
Well, petrol station didn't get damaged that much, but all the buildings do have asbestos, right? Any other country issue with? I mean, that's a big issue. And but if you got 35,000 buildings collapsing, it's gonna handle that so easily, right? Ukraine, and also which we're very active on. I mean, Ukraine have a huge issue. They just banned the asbestos in like last September. I'm talking about September, and they have 1 year of grace period, by the way. So asbestos is still kind of legal to use, you know, right now, and probably 99% of building stocks, all the houses have asbestos there. So issues there is much more severe than Turkey. Turkey's case of ban in like 1980s or something like that. You know what I mean? Something like that. So that's the differences, but still exist. And but Ukraine's case is, you know, sure, if you found the asbestos in, let's say, California building, you bubble the whole building, right? You put the full hazard in, hazmat, you know, gear to go in there and all kinds of stuff. But you can do that in a war zone. But there's some things you can do to actually reduce risk, such as having the right, you know, mask, having the wash the hands, wash the shoes, water down the area, you know, so that doesn't become dust, that kind of things. And we have an expert, David Hodgkin, and also the Dr. Takashi. We built the produced this emergency response components of this, potentially have the repairing on the buildings which may have contained the hazardous, you know, asbestos components of it. And we published in Ukraine, in the Ukrainian too, and we're working with a technical institute there right now to adaptation of it.
Interesting. So in terms of the regulatory function and coming back from this, so in the rebuilding phase, or, you know, let's just talk about recovery, or sort of recovering and getting back in the rebuilding phase, or going to the rebuilding phase. You know, one question is, of course, what do they do with the people that were building buildings, or, you know, especially maybe even private sector, that were not code compliant? Because if they had all the codes and regulations in place and they were doing inspections of, say, commercial facilities, government facilities, but then there was no real code compliance in so many of these buildings that were constructed.
Right.
Were they following up in terms of any sort of legal procedures after that, fines or anything else like that, you know, because a lot of times after disasters, there'll be, you know, sort of the court system coming after people and saying there's liability here and things should have been built to standard, et cetera.
Well, I mean, there's over 100 contractors and engineers, you know, they've been arrested, you know, in the initial week, by the way, which I don't know. I mean, I don't know exactly how you know that the engineer did wrong, is especially he was not inspected, and that, you know what I mean? And again, yeah, if you design per code and inspected that perfectly, and let's say we're doing, let's say California, expectation is, even if it meets the code of building, confirm the code, about 1% of buildings may be collapsing, by the way. You know, that's how design is set up like that. I know the engineers like us say it's gonna happen that way, or code says it's gonna happen this way. Nature is not like it. Nature is actually bell curve, by the way. Some do, you say what's gonna happen, average, right? Some do better, some do less. It's kind of like that. So that need to be understood. So understand that what went wrong and try to find the evidence of that, of the, 35,000 collapsed buildings and 100,000 or 200,000 heavily damaged one. I don't think it's possible to just go through anything like that, you know. And but yeah, this is not about fraud and wrongdoing. No, this is about the lack of knowledge and lack of inspection. No, so to change over this is actually pretty simple, right? To change the two lines in a building code, all the buildings need to be inspected by an independent structural engineer. That's it. Check, that was done, and that shall be implemented. And obviously local government have to enforce that rules. So, but that capacity exists in Turkey already. Building code exists in Turkey, so that's the only thing they need to do. So it doesn't take that much effort, But
Yeah,
but
definitely.
but liability components is the very critical. For example, especially the older buildings. This is something that actually does have a liability exist. Let me give you an example. LA is one of the most progressive city to identify the so-called older non-ductile concrete structures. Remember we talked about in case of California, is anything built prior to 1975, 1973, right? So it's identified like several thousand buildings in LA. And it was, okay. And I give you 25-year timeline to do that. 25 years is a long time. And chance of that the major earthquake happened before that is pretty damn high. If that happens, if the building collapse, kill someone there, I guarantee you those owners are going to be liable because be notified how dangerous the building is, right? But they don't see that for some reason. And yeah, people died, yes, maybe potentially jail sentence. I mean, it's a huge liability exists. That's why the seismic strengthening, which will takes about 10% of replacement cost to make it much safer. I think that's a really, really critical part of it.
Yeah, I think so. And it takes sort of maybe it's not the best way to say it, but it sort of takes generational change, right? To implement the safety standards, to bring that up to speed, to get the regulatory functions and inspections and code compliance in place, because that's a whole nother conversation about how to actually do that. But it's a key and core component of a functional society, in my opinion, because you can set policy and standards and strategy all day long, but unless people actually do it at a community level, then it's not really worth a lot. So, well, we hit about an hour. Everybody, thank you so much for joining us today. And obviously, thank you to Kit for joining us today and for sharing his views and experiences of being in Turkey during the earthquake. And so when you'd like to have more information, obviously just subscribe to the YouTube channel. These will also be over at tiems.info, and you'll find them there as well. And Harold, did you have any parting thoughts?
Just saying, it's always good to listen to you, Kit, and let's not get 10 years before we see each other again.
I hope not.
No, we have to see each other much more often. I'd just like to remind everybody, use the weekend, submit an abstract, and we have a great conference going on in September in South Africa, and you can join virtually. I just remind you, use the weekend for this. And thank you for a good presentation, Kit.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
All right. Thanks a lot, everybody. Have a great day, and we will see you in the next webinar.